Hey guys, what's up? This is Craig here from A Bass Lessons Melbourne, and today for our player profile I am joined by Mr. Neil Fairclough.
How you doing, Craig?
I'm good, man. Good morning.
Thank you, and thanks for getting here so early.
Ah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Hope the coffee's helping.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Thank you.
So we're here in sunny Melbourne this morning, after you've just had 2 nights.
2 nights of rain in sunny Melbourne.
I know.
Yeah.
You brought it with you.
I know, what is it? We literally, you come to Australia and every gig we've done, it's been a deluge.
Yeah.
So that's Manchester in Australia. Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, you're in town with Queen. You're on is it Australasian Tour, is that what you call it?
Yeah, we started in, we did South Korea, we did 2 shows in Seoul, then to Japan, we did 2 in Tokyo, 1 in Osaka and 1 in Nagoya, then on to New Zealand.
Have you been to New Zealand before?
Yeah, we've done, I think this Australasian thing we've done, this is our 3rd time.
Right.
But in New Zealand we'd only been to Auckland.
Right.
So this time we got to Wellington and Dunedin, or as we like to call it, Dunedin.
Dunedin.
Because it does sound more Lord of the Rings, doesn't it? Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So we'll start a petition about renaming it.
Sounds good.
I think it's good. And then from there we came to Brisbane, and we've done Brisbane. Where else have we done? Sydney, and we did the Sydney firefight.
Yeah, you did the
honourable mention,
the Bushfire Relief,
which is fantastic.
I've met so many people who have said that they watched that and the Queen performance was just amazing. It was one of the highlights.
It went really well. No,
yeah.
It was really good. Yeah. And I think that it was such a good cause, and there were so many great people on, and I got to go out and watch Katie Lang, who I was really excited about, and got to meet her afterwards. She was lovely, And
Ronan, did you see a bit of
I've seen. I've worked with Ronan a couple of times actually. Yeah. And just little charity gigs and stuff. Who else was? Oh, Alice Cooper was great. He was like old school dude with had all these props, but he was brilliant. The crowd, you could see the crowd sort of.
Yeah.
I know, but they were great. Dels Goodrum was there. Lots of people. It was great. It was really good vibe. And but it was a really good. Finishing off with, I think Brian guested with, what's he called? John Farnham?
John Farnham?
Yeah, John Farnham, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So, which we had to go, because that was one of the last things on there, but that's a classic song, isn't it? Real anthem.
Was it The Voice?
Yeah. So
bagpipe solos in the middle?
Absolutely, yeah. And... So yeah, we did that, and then we went on to Melbourne. Here we've done 2 nights here, and then we've only got Perth, Adelaide, and Gold Coast, and then we're done.
Cool. So was that like 3 weeks? All up? Bit more.
All told, it's about 6 weeks, including Asia. Yeah. So
pretty full-on schedule. Like it's kind of what 2 on, 2 off vibe, or?
Yeah. It can be. So occasionally get the one. It depends about distances travelled and stuff. But usually they'll do 2 on, 1 off, 2 on. When we get to, we're going to be doing Europe and UK, and they're doing 10 nights at the O2.
10 nights in a row.
Well, we do. I think there's about 6 together with like 2, and then day off 2. Day off, right. And then we're doing a couple in Manchester.
It's almost like you're doing panto.
I know. And 2 in Manchester, 2 in Birmingham, and then we do the last 4, I think, in the O2. I can't remember now. And that'll be we'll be doing European dates on either side of that. It just keeps going on. I mean, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said, I don't know how long it's going to go on, because I just thought they'll do this and then whatever, and and it was already amazing. But then the film came out and it just went,
right.
And it's really nice to see so many young people, and excited to hear this music.
It's definitely been a positive thing, that film, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the best feelings in the world, just as we're, when the show's about to start, and you can, I've seen people like, young girls and boys going,
you get you see like 3 generations almost,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it's just great, they and that's, there's one of those bands, I think, that bands do well when they've got like 7 or 8 bona fide hits, you know what I mean, and they can spread them out through the show or save them to. But the problem that Queen have and Queen and Adam Lambert have is that
too many hits.
Too many hits, yeah. They you know, what do they leave out is their problem.
That's
their
it.
problem,
You're always going to disappoint somebody.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's like I went to see Prince when he did 21 nights at the O2.
Fantastic, yeah. All right, okay, yeah. Salted Wound, right, okay.
Insane. And there was a point in the show where he sat down at the piano and he started to play like When Doves Cry and Little Red Corvette and stuff like that, and he just kind of slammed the lid and went, I get too many hits, y'all.
Yeah, it's too many hits, y'all, yeah. Well, it's true, yeah. I mean, and I think that's the thing, isn't it, is that there are a handful of artists and bands where that is the case, you know.
Yeah.
It's not to say that, you know, I love lots of bands that are obscure and haven't had any hits, but I think Queen are one of those bands where the ubiquity of the, you know, the popularity throughout the world, you know.
And they're not the songs. We'll get back to more Queen later on, I think. But while we're on it, like the songs aren't cookie cutter. You know, like one song isn't. You can't really predict what's going to happen next, from one song to the next. You know, like for example, AC/DC. I love AC/DC.
Yeah, me too.
But you kind of know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Whatever song you're in. But Queen is like everything is a completely different.
Well, I always say if an alien came down to Earth and they could perceive music the same way we do, if you played them Bohemian Rhapsody, Another One Bites the Dust, and say, I Want to Break Free, there's no way in a million years that they'd think that's the same band, you know what I mean? Because the influences amongst the band members were such that, you know, and it's only because we know that music, we know it's them, you know, and the iconic imagery of whether it's the guys with the long hair or Freddie with the mustache or whatever, you know, or dressing up like pantomime dames, whatever. But more importantly, it's just the fact that they had a sort of handle on what was going on. I'm probably more by accident than design, you know, by design, but they never stayed still, you know what I mean, and they were always willing to try things, you know. And
they were also given that freedom.
Yeah, absolutely, you know. And whereas, I think a lot of bands unfortunately fell by the wayside because maybe, you know, they were, especially in the days when charts were everything, weren't they? You know, now people are used to people being, you know, highest download or
YouTube
streaming, whatever, YouTube.
There's so many different avenues that people can access the music on.
Exactly, you know, but in Britain, back in the day, as I say...
Top of the Pops.
At Top of the Pops, you know, that was it, you know, and actually, in some ways, I sort of missed that because you'd sort of discover, Joe Public would discover different kinds of music, because I remember, you know, you'd sort of see, you'd see like Queen, and then you know the next chart place would be like Culture Club, and then the next one would be like Neil Diamond, and then it'd be Iron Maiden, and then so within 5 or 6 chart places there could be 5 or 6 different genres of music. You know what I mean? That you would never in a million years choose to listen to if you went, I want to stream this. You know, you'd have to search.
You just get everything that sounds like David Bowie.
Exactly, yeah. So in those days, I think it was quite good. I mean, I know like in America they've always had certain charts for certain genres, but for a while, you see, this is what cracks me up as well. We always talk about, you know, the changing industry attitudes of listeners and stuff. But I guess really that, you know, the listening world, it's not that old anyway, is it? You know, it's the turn of the century or before the century. You know, the first recordings, whatever. Not the 21st. I should have said that. End of the 19th century.
That's it,
but yes, and the way that they shifted albums, you know, because that came into its own, didn't it? Really, in sort of late '60s, in terms of how people listen to. Yeah. You know.
You were forced to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To side A.
Which, although I think, you know, I do hear there's a lot of young people who have like vinyl parties, and I think a lot of them do get it, you know what I mean? So, but what's brilliant is, I guess, is that now people can. It used to be that you'd have to have a record deal and stuff, but anyone can put music out now. You know what I mean?
Which is good and bad, because there's a lot of noise you have to wade through sometimes. But it definitely levels the playing field a lot more.
Sift through, not shift through. Well, it depends. No, absolutely, you're right. But that's the thing, isn't it? And there's plenty of things on YouTube. I'm sure you and I talked about it, where you go, oh, this is amazing. Who's this guy? You know, like I would never have. Or at least it would have taken me longer, you know, people like Noah and Scary Pockets, and certainly they that blew up, didn't it? The
Wolfpack and
Dirty Loops.
Dirty Loops, yeah.
And who was that?
Wolfpack.
Yeah, Wolfpack. You know what I mean? All those guys.
Yeah.
And Theo Katz.
Well, they because of the internet, they had a career.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's still a music industry. It's just it just looks different.
And for young musicians, it's amazing. I mean, I remember, you know, if someone said, "Have you heard that rare live bootleg of Weather Report in Japan?" You'd be going, "No." Oh well, Keith's got it or something.
Yeah, you'd be sitting like
and you'd
years.
have to, yeah, and it would, you know, and then it would circulate, and you go, "Oh look, here's that cassette I've got."
Well, I remember my bass teacher giving me like a tape of things to listen to, you know, and it was like Weather Report, Gary Willis, Marcus Miller, Victor Wooten, Tribal Tech, all this stuff, and I would just walk into school and just listen to it, going, what world am I in?
Yeah, exactly. You know? And that was the only way of doing it, wasn't it? Really, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas now, I guess young musicians they can say, "Oh, what was that guy talking about?"
Yeah.
You know.
But you know what it's like. Sometimes you're paralysed by choice. You still keep just listening to the same things over and over because you could listen to any music in the world you want.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think that's an important thing. I mean, if you think about even your own listening habits, and I'm sure as you did, grew up listening to vinyl and listening to albums as a whole. But what happens is that you get used to the track order, you know, the calligraphy on the album, you know, the gatefold sleeve, you know, so you became you bought into it, you know, you'd sort of...
It's a piece of work, it's an entity as a whole, yeah. It was funny, somebody was talking the other day about, I preferred side B of X album. Yeah. And it's just like, that concept just doesn't exist anymore, you know. Or do you put first on side B to bring it back, you know?
Or in Queen's case, with Queen 2, side white and side black.
Right.
Just putting that out there.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're right. But the point is that the track order and how albums ran was also they thought about that, didn't they? You know, how's the album going to start? How is side one going to finish? How are we going to open side two? All these things that and I remember as well. There was that, I don't even remember the time when CD was really getting popular in the sort of early 90s, and people were chucking out 70, sometimes 80 minutes of music, and you
like
find
14, 15, 16 songs.
Yeah, no, I love music, but you know, it's just too much to take on, isn't it? And so
it's almost like a 2-hour, 15-minute show, you know.
Exactly, who does that? It's unbelievable.
It's raining.
It's raining. You've got to listen to. Oh my God, you know.
Bass solos and
that's horrific, isn't it? Yeah. That's where everyone talks, isn't it? You know. So, but I think that that's one of the things that the romanticised nostalgia of it. You know, when you think, because in our memories, you'll think of whether it's Dark Side of the Moon or whether it's A Kind of Blue or whether it is, the track listings and everything that went with it. Whereas now it's kind of abstract, isn't it? Because you think, I'll check out what a great album that is, but you don't have a clue about any of that, and that's a shame, But
but on the other hand, it doesn't make the music any less.
No, absolutely no. Yeah, no, that's the
and having that direct access to artists through
it's brilliant.
Instagram or Twitter or YouTube, imagine what it would have been like to be able to see live updates from your favourite band of backstage sound check or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it'll just be.
It's amazing.
So if you're a kid and you're into music, that's crazy exciting to be able to have that perception and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when someone you were massively into, and they really were out there in a different world, But if you saw a paragraph in a music magazine, of them saying what their plans were that year, you'd be going, "Oh my, that's such a body talking about," and it was literally, I don't know, 40 words or something, But you'd be like,
you'd hang on to it.
Look, Whereas now, you can find out what colour their underwear is if you like. Well, depends on what site you go to, I suppose.
But. I mean, you're blue today, I think?
Red, I think, actually.
Red.
Yeah. I don't know why.
I didn't check the feed this morning. But.
Yeah, that's good. Good, thank you. Thanks for the notes.
Now, you are a Mancunian.
Yeah.
From right in, or?
Specifically from the mythical town of Bolton, actually.
Where people just wander?
That's right, yeah. People, what is that place, and then I did a huge move a few miles down the road to Whitefield in Manchester. But I think that growing up, you know, it's funny, wherever you are, there was this, again, when I look back about, because I've got a brother and 2 sisters, we all play, and my mum and dad, you know, my dad used to play piano. He was a huge Oscar Peterson fan. He used to love jazz, and he was a big, you know, I remember what some of the memories with my dad was that in his car he'd have like 2 albums. One was We Get Requests, Oscar Peterson, and The Special Magic of Oscar Peterson. I think that was more of a collection, because I've never seen that since, actually, but I remember, I'm sure that's what it was called. And then there was a couple, there was the 2 George Ben mid-70s albums, Breeze In and In Flight, is it? That he had on cassette, and I used to think, oh, this is cool, you know.
Yeah, wow.
But I got, funnily enough, I became hugely, the whole Queen thing's very weird for me, because for being about 9 or 10 years old, one of my sisters had A Day at the Races and Live Killers. So this would have been in '79, because that's when Live Killers came out, and so I was 10. And
is your sister a bit older?
Yeah, she's a couple of years older than me. So and I said, can I listen to those albums? And I completely got ensconced in these albums, and then that was it. I thought, I really like this band, so I started getting, and that was it. I got, for the next 18 months, it was just, or maybe 2 years, whatever, it was all Queen, and I got all their albums. I was obsessed with them, and I knew all the tracks and stuff. It's the same with Tyler, who does percussion and vocals with us, you know. He was the same, you know what I mean?
Were you playing at this point?
No, no, absolutely not. I didn't start playing bass till I was 14, nearly 15, you know. And in fact, my brother and my sisters were playing. My brother plays guitar, and my sister, one plays piano. They both sing, and and I remember seeing them at a place called Masses in Bolton. It's like a nightclub. In fact, I'm the youngest, but my sister Lois was still at school. She was too young to be there, you know. She was like 15, singing and stuff like that. But I remember looking at them and thinking, oh, well, that's what they do, you know what I mean? I don't know what I'm going to do, you know. But then something clicked. I went, I think I want. Funnily enough, it wasn't my family necessarily, even though they were a huge influence. There was a friend of mine played guitar, huge AC/DC fan. Nick Schofield, have I got his name right? If you're out there, Nick. I don't know. Anyway, so we decided we'd do a band, and I thought, you know, my sister said, you should play bass. And I remember her showing me, by this point, obviously it was a few years later, she showed me Mark King on Top of the Pops, and it was Sun Goes Down. And she loved Level 42. I mean, in fact, I love all the albums, but those first, up into sort of World Machine, you know, up to Standing in the Light and stuff.
They're coming out here next month, I think.
Are they coming out here?
Yeah,
fantastic, yeah. I thought, oh, that's a bit good. But I'd sort of already, you know, I loved like Sting, and Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple was a big, not just his bass playing, but his voice and everything. And so, yeah, it was one of the things.
So you were kind of like listening to stuff very much all the time? Like you weren't kind of going like Led Zeppelin?
Actually, no, you're right. I did, at the time I was listening to that, but throughout the 80s, I realised I was a bit of a child of the 70s. My brother was playing me a lot of stuff like Deep Purple and Rush, and he sort of laughed because he said, you know, you'll listen to other stuff besides Queen. And when I was young, I was going, oh no, I love Queen. Of course, he was right. I got into, so it was more of the rock stuff I was listening to. But then I remember him playing me like Ricky Lee Jones and Peter Gabriel and stuff like that, and Genesis stuff like that. But
RT pop.
Yes, that kind of stuff. And although I did like, I remember in the 80s, because I was never enamoured with some of the sounds of the 80s. Funnily enough, when I look back now, I think, I like it now. But the one band that I did love was, and still do, was Tears for Fears. I just thought they were great. But for most of it, and especially in my school years, I was listening to stuff that was more 70s, you know.
Right.
But the great thing about bands like Level 42 is that you started hearing, so who was he? Oh, Stanley Clarke. He was a big Stanley, and then you check out who that was, Return to Forever, and then you think, it's Marcus Miller. So they were a really good stepping stone to what I got into, which was like getting into Weather Report and more jazz stuff, and then obviously later on I went to a little tertiary college in Leigh, but amazingly, I got there when there were some amazing musicians and people who were teaching there were great. People like Mike Walker, who's a top jazz guitar dude who teaches all around the world as well and stuff. But and Steve Berry did some bass. There was Leslie Chisnell played piano there, and it was really good. And but my introduction to jazz was a little bit sort of like, because I'd got in there, but as soon as you're in there and you sort of meet people who are
can actually
way above you, you're like, going, what do I need to do here? And I remember I was given How High the Moon, and my first foray into sort of playing around a jazz standard that wasn't like a blues or something like that was I wrote out the bass line. So after AABA, after that, whatever the form was, I just went back to the beginning. You know what I mean? So I wasn't improvising the bass line even. But
you got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. You know what I mean? So once you start doing that, and then of course I did a little bit of with Wigan Youth Jazz Orchestra, and I remember being, because my playing was better than my reading then, and I remember being in awe of the guy who used to do who was their regular bass player, and he'd sort of realised, going, oh, how's he doing that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it took me a while to sort of catch up, getting into that. And actually, funnily enough, I always felt that if I'd started a little bit younger, because when I've taught myself, at places doing teaching, I've often found that kids seem to just take it on board and go with it, do what you ask, and come back. Whereas adults tend to question stuff.
Exactly.
Well, why are you doing that? And you feel like saying, well, we can't get into that until you do this.
So if you've got a young kid, you go, this is C on the staff, and this is C on the bass, and they go, cool.
And it makes sense to me.
But the adult goes, so what's C sharp or whatever, and you go like, don't worry about it.
Why worry about it? And also because you got in your mind, I think, but I can play. I can play a teen town. That's how I got into this.
Yeah. It is tough to go backwards. To be able to play and then kind of suck. And that's why I never played upright, because I could play electric, and then picked up upright and just went, I can't even play a scaling tune. And my hands really hurt. Yeah,
I got on sort of half and first position, and I did a little bit, and I did some gigs. Around actually when I started going to Salford, and that was another great experience. I mean, I met a lot of still some great friends as well. Ash Sohn was there, who
the drummer,
who's played with everyone.
Fantastic. His YouTube channel, Instagram channel is just
it's amazing.
It's a joy.
He's a great guy.
Have you ever been to the Windmill Studio?
I have, yeah. Wow. I've been seeing his family and stuff. It's fantastic. But yeah, so people like Ash and Andy Treacy is a good friend, another drummer who did Faithless for 15 or 20 years sort of with them, and Groove Armada and stuff. Adam Phillips, loads of people. Mike Gorman, Mike Outram, who I've met before. Amazing musicians, all around London and stuff now,
So this is when you were at college?
That was, after Lee I went to Salford. This is actually where I met Francis, where Francis went there.
Thanks, Francis. Who plays in
Incognito, So it was good, and I think with those kind of places, it's just being with like-minded people and people who are going to turn you on to music that you would never imagine you'd hear, or sometimes just being on the same wavelength. You know what I mean? And
it's one of the great things about going to study music is just being in that environment of the only thing we have to worry about or concern ourselves with is music.
Exactly.
It's a rare place. People go, should I go and study, or should I just learn off YouTube or private lessons and stuff? Depending on what your personality is.
And where else are you going to be where, for, 24 hours a day you can talk about and indulge in music and talk and play, and stuff like that. And I think that was probably, and what happened, I didn't finish the Salford thing. I was playing with so many people. I remember, in fact, one of the tutors did try to fight my corner, but fair's fair. I hadn't done we used to have something called the recording studio and synth lab thing, and I just hadn't got round to doing the work. I was playing with a lot of people, and sort of epic fail there.
So you're like 20?
Yeah, when did I go? I was maybe 20. When would that have been? Sorry. Actually a bit older, about 23. 22, 23, 24, I don't know, maybe,
90?
So by that point, I think I was 91 when I went to, so I would have been 22, when I went to Salford. And so from 91 to 92. But that was the beginning of when I started, I was playing with another great horn players like Neil Yates, Andy Ross, Martin Slattery, and all the...
Is this jazz stuff?
Some jazz stuff, yeah, and then this was my first foray into. I'd done a couple of things, but really looking at horn section stuff. I'd started to, which was a great thing again about college, is that you start to, all right, I will try this. And so I was transcribing. We were talking about it briefly before, but I formed a band with Andy Treacy actually, and we called it Pocket Central, which was after a Will Lee sort of bass column he used to have in bass player back in the day, and the only reason is that we did our first gig at a place in Manchester called PJ Bell's, and after our first gig, people were saying so sorry, in order to have the advertisement, I said, we'll call it Pocket Central, with the idea that I was going to replace the name, because I thought it's a terrible name, you can't keep that. And as soon as we did the first gig, people saying, when are Pocket Central playing again? And of course, by then it's, so the second gig to do that. But the point being is that we did Tower of Power and Stevie Wonder and Steely Dan, but that's when I started to, initially Andy Ross and Martin Slattery and the guys were doing the arrangements, but then I started transcribing parts and writing the horn parts out. Right. And that was a really good learning curve. And of course they'd tell me, that's right, but really it should be in this octave.
The voicing should be,
voicing, so the practicalities of doing stuff, with funnily enough, talking about the upright, I did about 2, 3, maybe 4 sort of gigs, and I played with a fantastic drummer called Steve Brown, who works in and around London. He was absolutely ensconced in the world of sort of 50s and 60s jazz, you know what I mean? But he was so encouraging, he's going, yeah, that's great. And sometimes my introduction to jazz early on when I was about 18 was a bit like, if you're not playing this music, you've no business doing music, so it was a bit like,
Yep.
But as soon as someone was passionate about it for all the right reasons, I thought, oh yeah, and I started to enjoy it,
Yeah.
And, so for me, college was just suddenly opening this into this gateway of music that I would never thought I'd hear, and B, that I'd ever play, because it is hard to, of your own volition, get out there, isn't it, and say, well, can we play some jazz, and people go, who are you, you know what I mean? Yeah. So when you're young and you get a chance to do that, it's really good. So, and the particular skills that you'd need if you would, and it's not necessarily that you need to be the best, like a Hadrian Farode or a Yannick Gwisdal, or these are utterly incredible,
or Francis Hilton, or
Francis Hilton, I should say, yes. Improvising musicians, at least having the experience of playing stylistically the genre, and what's expected of you. Then I think things like sessions become, you understand them more if people say, I want this kind of thing,
Yeah, understanding musical context and references and stuff like that.
And you find out, like, for example, like, if you're doing like a sort of a ballad or a jazz ballad, I would find that playing the electric bass, the notes would hang sometimes a bit too long, or it would just poke out from what the ensemble was. So if I do the old palm mute thing, it gives you that 50s, where the tone sort of,
maybe over
the note dies off, all over the board, exactly. And so all these things, I guess, you can't really be,
all these things that nobody notices apart from the bass player.
Yeah, exactly. No one's actually bothered about. Did you hear what I was doing there? No. And so this is the good thing about it. And obviously, you've seen other bass players. There were a lot of other fantastic players there. And
did you ever encounter Lawrence Cottle? Because he was a northerner.
Yeah, he's actually from Wales. Yeah.
Apologies.
No, he's. I think he's. I've met his brother. I've only seen him. I don't think I've ever met him. I don't know. I'd probably go.
But did you ever at that time, was he a name in the?
He I knew of him because a trumpet player friend of mine, Nigel. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. That's really embarrassing. He said, "Have you heard of Lawrence Cottle?" I think he even back then he'd been doing some big band stuff, but he had his own band doing stuff. And I just heard that and went, "That's ridiculous,"
It really is.
And he's a fantastic piano player as well. He had lessons from Jacko, is that right?
Or
a lesson, so. Or he met him as
yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's I like watching anything. All these guys who are fantastic, I love watching. The thing that I found pretty soon though for me was that my interest, as much as I love all the muso stuff, was I really enjoyed songs and writing songs and that sort of.
Did you move to London? Is this a year in London?
No, I never did. I almost did. But I don't think I was ever serious about it. A lot of my friends, they decided they were going to go or whatever, and I was whatever. And plus,
Would London have been like the, all right, I'm going to do jazz, you moved to London vibe? Or
it may have done it. I honestly don't know how that would have panned out. I do know that, like, I'd got my, I'd just started the Pocket Central thing, and I was really excited about it, and I'd actually started writing.
So was that like 3-piece horns, singer?
It was actually 5 and sometimes 6-piece horns, rhythm section, lead singer, and but we had like percussion as well as drums. It was full on. It was absolutely no money whatsoever made in it, but it was an exciting time because audiences were genuinely. Of course, this is before YouTube or whatever that stuff, but it was. I think for a lot of people hearing that at the time, I remember in the early 80s, late 80s, when I first heard Tower of Power, a drummer friend of mine from Lee College, one of the tutors, he gave me basically a cassette of Live and in Living Colour. Well, that was it. I thought, this music speaks to me. What is going on? Because you've got your own Tower band, haven't you? Pocket. No, it's your fusion one.
Off the Leash.
Off the Leash. See what he's done there. See. And everything about it I absolutely love, because the thing about Tower of Power is obviously there's all the great playing and stuff, but they're great songs, you know what I mean? Songs. And at the heart of it, it's a soul band, that plays in their particular way, and so doing that was great, and I think I'd given so much of myself. I just thought, if I go to London, what am I going to do? I was still split now on whether to go to carry on sort of writing and doing stuff, or just because sometimes I find that you can be a session guy and you can be all things to all men, but I felt like I was starting to lose myself a little bit, And
because it's just a kind of circular thing, I suppose. I mean, if you've got the band, at least you've got kind of maybe like a direction or something you can kind of...
Yeah, exactly, and there's always payoffs. I mean, you could be in a band and spend 10 or 15 years in the back of a van touring the country, and it may, you might be U2 or, Queen or whatever, and you have huge whatever. It doesn't really happen anymore.
But if you don't try, you'll never know.
But if you don't try, you'll never know. But the cost of that is that if you don't have, like we talk about skill sets, if you don't have the ability to look at charts, if you don't understand functional harmony, if you don't chord voicings and how and what it sounds like, then you're going to struggle if suddenly that stops and you think, oh, okay, I'll go into session work. Well, that's hard, isn't it? So I always had one foot in both camps. You know what I mean? And I enjoyed both, but I realised in my mid-20s, sometimes I think a lot of musicians go through this, where you start thinking, oh, what am I doing? Am I right? I should be doing more of this and what have you.
Some of your friends land some big gigs and they're all...
Yeah, you know what I mean? But then I realised, actually, I'm just going to enjoy whether that's Miles Davis or Iron Maiden. I'm not going to feel ashamed and as soon as I enjoyed music for what it was and loved all of it, it sort of freed me up, you know what I mean? And I felt, and in a lot of ways I started to play a lot simpler, just because I was more interested in the song, and song is king and what does it need, you know what I mean? But even though I still loved all that more some of the technical aspects of it and maybe jazzier stuff, but then I realised I loved one of my favourite bass players is Willie Weeks, you know what I mean? Of course we know the Donny Hathaway song, but those guys, same with Jameson and Chuck Rainey, that particular kind of bass playing where
it's serving the song, but it's also like a part in itself that you can just enjoy. Yeah.
And that I think is I mean, it's all good. I mean, I love Phil Lynnett's bass playing. I love, whether it's rock stuff or funk stuff or whatever, and I think that's the thing is I mean, like we talked about Oscar Peterson, but Ray Brown and I know Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen played with him later, but people like Leroy Vinegar and Paul Chambers and stuff, they had a big influence on me in the sense that when I thought of jazz or playing that kind of thing, I was trying to bring that to the fore. But, and I think just having a wide range of musical influences. I mean, again, you know, to bring it back to Queen, but if you look at an album like Night at the Opera, you know, they had like vaudeville, they had bits of sort of trad jazz, you know, from the album before and stuff like that. And all those influences would play out, you know what I mean? I just don't know if you do that anymore, but even then I suppose it was crazy. But it's always going to help, especially in, I guess, if you're writing and stuff, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever go through a Jacko phase?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and keep going back to me. You know, the thing about Jacko is that it was not only the sort of mind-blowing, game-changing bass playing, but his music was beautiful.
His writing was.
His writing, you know what I mean?
The word of mouth big band stuff is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sort of ethereal, otherworldly sometimes, isn't it? You know, the stuff that he was able to do.
Harmonies that you would go like.
Yeah.
You wouldn't put that with that.
No, I know exactly. You know, and even when you saw him playing piano, you could hear it, couldn't you? You know, you could hear it, how he was hearing stuff. You know, and in a way that it was like that natural extension that maybe Joe Zawinul was looking for as well. When you hear him with Weather Report, you just go, you know, and I'm sure it was the same for him, you know, symbiotic. It was like, oh, these guys can realise what it is I'm trying to do, you know. So yeah, and he's also one of those guys that you keep going back to and you start hearing other things, don't you? You know what I mean? You know,
yeah. There's always something that you've missed, or you've changed, you've grown and matured, and then you hear it and go, you just a different perspective on it. And it means
I mean, like the
different.
Havana, well, not only just the bass line, which is thousand grand, but the solo, you know, it's just beautiful, isn't it? You know what I mean? And when someone's that lyrical, I mean, I don't know if he was, perhaps he'd worked that out, I don't know, but or maybe it's improvised, but either way, it's fantastic, you know. It's and as a record, those albums are always fantastic. But I remember, again, same thing, and in fact, I think Pat Metheny might have said this, you know, but I remember thinking, if I try, the person I'd sort of done that the most with in terms of emulate them was when I was about 16. I used to sort of put the needle back and transcribe all Mark King's stuff, you know. I was like that about level 42 and stuff, and then of course people were saying, have you heard this guy? And I was going, who's this dude? You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. And you realise that you just end up chasing someone else's style or bass playing technique or whatever for years, only to sound like them, you know what I mean? Which is unavoidable sometimes, and of course that's what everyone does. All the greats do that, is they borrow from stuff, you know what I mean? So I realised that I thought, I'm never going to be, who's going to be a Jacko unless you give 100% to being that. But even then, people are just going to say, oh, he's just like Jacko.
You need to be Neil.
Yeah, exactly. And you're never going to, be, and it was Pat Metheny said, you know, I see all these guys who do this, but they're never going to be Jacko, you know what I mean? But, you know, I understand why people do, because it's irresistible, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like catnip when you hear like for cats, you know what I mean? When you hear that sound, you know, whether it's with Joni Mitchell or, you know, the Mike Stern stuff he did, you know, all these little things that you saw him do, you know, it's tragic, isn't it? It's very sad. But what he brought to music was fantastic.
Absolutely. So in this kind of like early 90s stuff, what kind of idea of like rack gear and stuff and cubicky headless basses?
No, I didn't. I used to borrow a lot of gear before, but I bought my first. I bought a heart key. Well, I'd had a couple of amps that I'd sort of been given or whatever, you know. But my first one, I'm going to do this properly, was I think it was the Transporter Cabs heart key. It was 4x10, and I got I think it was the 350. Oh no, I got a Trace Elliott head. Yeah, that's right. Classic me. I sort of mixed and matched. You know what I mean? Well, I like Trace Elliott, and this looked good. Yeah. And I had that for years. I've still got them somewhere. And then I moved on to getting a proper, I think it was a 350 head heart key. Do they do? Are you good with gear? You probably know all this, don't you?
HA 300 or 350.
Well, it's got numbers and letters. That's good enough for me. What I use now though is I use the still use heart key. I'm used to heart key, and I've used them since, like I said, the early 90s. But I realise that all gear is probably great, isn't it? You know, but what I use with Queen is I've got I've got 6 15-inch speakers, 6 4x10. But of course, it used to be I'd have 4 on, but I've actually only got, I've got the 15 and the 4x10 in the middle on.
So just one stack?
So it's just one stack.
Oh.
All dummies on top, that doesn't do anything. But in the rack off with Jez, my bass tech, I've got 4 LH1000 heads, 2 running and 2 spare. And yeah, so I've had to sort of change up a sound that I would have if I was doing something more funk groove orientated. Whatever. This I've got a bit more of everything going on.
Any pedals, effects? No.
I have got some. I don't really use much
I can't really
on this particular
I can't really think
gig
of
at the moment. I did use the octave divider occasionally on a couple of things, and I used when we do Days of Our Lives, I use the chorus. We've not done that for a while. And what else have I used? Oh, sorry, no, I do use. There's a little run in Rhapsody after the heavy bit. I do the middle run, so I have to sort of go. Take them off.
What was that you're standing on there?
That was me just doing my pedal. That's
the octave pedal?
It's like a distortion with an octave above. I don't know what it is, honestly. You probably need to speak to Jez. I'm useless when it comes to gear.
Making me sound good.
Yeah, what does this do? Make it whatever. Yeah, it doesn't always work, but I sort of try and... do you know what? I love things like... I think octave divider... If I wasn't doing this gig, I use the octave divider. Like I've got the... I've actually got on this tour, I think it was an MXR octave divider, but I've got the Boss
OC2,
classic one, and I've got a MXR Cornwall, which I sometimes use if I was doing, let's say if I was doing like a 3-piece thing, a bit like the Roscoe Beck thing, I would do, 7th and 3rd sort of chordal stuff and a bass part there. And that's nice for sort of 3 parts when the guitarist goes, or the octave divided, like if you're doing a riff and then he breaks off and then you can have the...
Still keep it. Yeah, it's good for trio stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And space.
That's what I found I enjoy, I like to do.
I mean, I guess essentially Queen is like a trio.
It is really,
bass, drums, guitar, and vocals,
Yeah. Obviously, there are the important piano tracks.
But it doesn't. You never hear it and think, oh, it just sounds like 4 instruments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we do gigs, Brian and Roger, it's like a thunderous pairing. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's a magnificent sound. I mean, it's just volume. I mean, and what I love about the guys, about the old school, because we were talking about some bands that have track running and stuff like that, is that they don't do any of that. Yeah. Obviously, they've got bits where. After the solo in Rhapsody, which they always did, we'd stop and then they'd bring up the operatic middle section.
Fair enough.
Or there's like an intro or interludes.
But it's obvious. Though,
exactly. And that was their thing.
Nobody's trying to trick in.
They hate the idea of having vocals on track, having this, that, and the other. Spike, the keyboardist, will have Spike's been with them since 85 actually.
Really?
Doing the live stuff with them. He'll have like say the samples which he'll play with Roger. Okay. So he's actually playing it in. And there's been a couple of things like maybe the we will, he has a sample thing which sounds great, but that we're already singing it just peps it up. But in terms of the harmonies, there's 6 of us, now, and so you've got a 3-part that is doubled, maybe sometimes a 4-part.
So it sounds unreal. It sounds really.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, no, thank you. Yeah, but and what I love about them as well is that we always sound check. They don't do that whole thing.
Even when you're doing 2 nights in the same venue.
Yeah. Turn up, sound check.
That's cool.
I think they've had to.
What's sound check like?
It's basically Roger will go up and he'll check. He's got the main stage kit and the B stage kit, so he'll go down to the B stage, start with that. Just check stuff, you know what I mean? As much for the guys out front as well, because sometimes different venues will, even though these things, it seems to be this homogenous thing of either arenas or stadiums, but they do have, some of them have different, come back from the back wall, whatever. What's the word I'm looking for?
Reflections.
That'll do, reflections. Yeah.
It's the name of your solo album.
That's right, yeah. And basically, then he'll go to the main kit. He'll do a bit there. We're all checking we've got stuff in our ears, but it's a digital desk, so you can have scenes and stuff. I tend to try and avoid that. I like just to try and keep everything throughout the whole gig. Similar thing. I might have a couple of tracks where something's boosted, but I find if I mess with from track to track too many times, then there's always something.
Do you have guitar in your ears?
I do have guitar in my ears, but occasionally I'll have a little bit. You're not supposed to do this, I know, but I might take it out a little bit sometimes just to get a...
And do you have like stage and crowd mics to get the ambience going on?
Ambient stuff, yeah, there are mics that are there, you can hear that. I think once Roger's done his thing and Brian does his, we'll probably do... there's always a couple of tracks that let's try this, and we'll try and do a different thing. So we'll do something that's pretty heavy, and then we'll do something that's more like. It's all live with these guys. It's all bigger and bolder than it is on record. But then we might do another one, Bites of Dust, or we might do a soft one, and it all Adam's in ears, but we've also got the monitors everywhere, and he does amazing. He's fantastic, isn't he? But he. There might be things that you might want to check from track to track, and then we may run whatever the opening song is just as like the last thing, so everyone knows it's all there. To go, yeah. But we could theoretically walk on without a sound check, but there's something about doing a sound check when you walk on. You can feel a bit discombobulated when you've not. You think, oh, this is the first time we're playing in front of these.
Is everything going to be okay?
Yeah,
with just that extra peace of mind.
So exactly, and we have done stuff where sometimes people haven't made sound check and things have. And you think, never do that again.
So, because I'm just conscious of time for you, but definitely some stuff I want to get to.
Okay.
How did you end up being the bass player for one of the biggest rock bands
of all time? As always, look.
So from Pocket Central, did they come and see you play? And
that's right, yeah. They came to PJ Bell's back in the and said, hey, let's check out a Tower Power covers band. Did you have some big breaks before that, like some touring stuff, some session stuff? How? I'd done the odd little thing, nothing as big as back in those days. I think most of the music business was down in London. So even if you were from Manchester, you would often go down to doing that. But what I did start doing back then was working with a gentleman named Elio Pace, who I've known for 25 odd years now. And we've done a lot of stuff over the years together. I've played on albums of his and stuff like that. He's a piano player, singer, songwriter. And he was asked to do, this is back in 2010, he was asked to be the MD and have it was his band ostensibly, which had 3 horns, rhythm section, 3 backing vocalists, the girls there. And for Terry Wogan's, the late Terry Wogan's, I guess you could call it his swan song radio program. He'd sort of retired, but came back with something called Weekend Wogan. Radio 2 audience, we'd go in on the Saturday, and there'd be different artists who'd come in every week. The Saturday we'd rehearse, so we'd run.
So kind of like an audio Jules Holland.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There was the old BBC Red Button, so some of the stuff is out there on YouTube. And that's been put up. So it would be that kind of audience. There were people they were great. We had Rick Astley and Tony Hadley, and we had Lulu and stuff. But we had Glenn Campbell came, which was it wasn't known then, but it was sadly it was at the beginning of his diagnosis for the Alzheimer's thing. But just playing with him was fantastic, and I was like, oh, this legend. And of course, in fact, you can see it on YouTube. As he's singing, he goes, "Turn the bass down." He meant in the monitors, but of course, I was like that. Oh no! And so consequently, and we had what's his name? Oh, I forgot his name. He's written for so many people. But we had some great people on, and we would and what? Sorry,
Tom Jones, did he ever come on?
No, he didn't actually. No, but we had some young artists of the day. But we'd have like a chart, so usually we'd get a chance to see it, but we'd have 3 hours where we'd rehearse on the Saturday with whoever's coming in, and Elio would do a couple of his own things or arrangements, whether that was his songs or covers. And then on the Sunday, that would be the broadcast, and it went out 11 till 1. Anyway, one week, as I was talking to someone after the show, we were outside, and Alan Boyd, who was the then producer, in his lovely Scottish brogue, said, and next week we've got Brian May coming on.
And next week we've got Brian May coming on.
Yeah, he was talking. I was talking to someone, and I was talking to someone else, and I went, "Excuse me, did you just say Brian May?" Because that whole visceral thing from being a child, you know, was
sweaty
Brian May's
palms
coming on.
already.
I can't believe it. Just to be in the same room as him, you know what I mean? I'd seen him live, but and he came. He was working with fantastic West End vocalist Kerry Ellis that he was working with, and they came on. I don't think originally he was going to do some acoustic stuff with her, but I don't think he had any intention of playing. But Elio said, "Oh, I think he'd jokingly say, you know, my bass player won't ever forgive me if you don't get to play." And I didn't know this. He told me afterwards. And Brian said, "Oh, shall I bring my, you know, because classic Brian, he's lovely. He was going, shall I bring my guitar? You sure, you know?" Yeah. So we did. I think we did Save Me, and we did a couple of songs that they'd been working on with her album. And then we started to, we just happened to do Give Me Some Lovin' that Elio's going to do. But of course, I don't even remember the Wembley concert, but they used to do that.
Really?
And so we started up, and he just finished, and he was like, "Oh, you know, like, can I play?"
No.
Yeah, no.
Get off, Brian.
So he started playing. It was fantastic, and
you're like, E.
yeah. So so we did that, and then after we did the show, I think he'd asked if they were doing something called Proms in the Park about a month later, and we were asked to do a few of us were asked to do that, and basically, to cut a long story short, the following year I ended up doing their Anthems tour that he was doing with Kerry. Not expecting any of this, so every little thing that came in was just even better.
So it was the part of the musical, the Broadway thing?
Yeah, it was partly. It was they'd done an album called Anthems, and there were some musical stuff, a couple of original things, and I think I don't know. Obviously, you'd have to ask. I don't know what the plans were, but I know that he was asking our availability for the following year. I think it was April or May or something, and we did a tour, which I never expected to happen. So that was amazing. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. You know what I mean?
Roger Taylor?
No, Roger. It was just Brian. Roger's son Rufus played drums, who now plays for the Darkness, because he did the Queen and Adam Lambert gig for a few years.
Right.
I mean, now he plays for the Darkness, and he's just so suited for it. It's fantastic. And some other, and a couple of the guys, a couple of the girls. There was a few of us, but basically we ended up doing that, and we did some things during the summer, and then I did meet Roger. We did like a charity, I think at the Savoy Hotel in London, for Terence Higgins Trust, which is the AIDS benefit foundation, and it was weird, because obviously these guys know each other, but I ended up, Mike Rutherford was supposed to play with Jeff Beck. I just picked those two names up, and I don't think Mike could make one of the first days, so I ended up playing Little Wing with Jeff Beck and Roger Taylor, all this stuff. It was incredible, yeah. And he did this thing, and I mean, talk about, he was jaw-droppingly ridiculous, you know what I mean, as well. And so he had Brian on one hand and Jeff Beck on the other, and Roger Taylor there. I was going, is this actually happening? What's going on? So, and anyone who knew me knew that I was, as a kid, a complete Queen nerd,
Yeah.
So then after that, basically, to answer your question, November 2011, I was asked about my availability, and I still thought it was for Brian.
Yeah.
And I found out, no, they're doing this thing for the EMAs. It was I think they were getting a Global Icon Award. It was for MTV and it was in Belfast. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. And I think it was Rogers Tech Nigel who was saying to me, no, it's this, and I was going, you are joking.
Because they hadn't really performed as Queen since...
They'd done, I think from 2004 or 5 through to 2008, they did Queen with Paul Rodgers.
Right,
And with Jamie Moses on guitar and Danny Miranda on bass and stuff. And they did that for three years or so. I think they did an album as well. I'm saying think as if I don't know everything about them.
Sure.
Called Cosmos Rocks. But they, so they did that, and I saw that as well. But they, yes, you're right. From then, they hadn't done anything. And I don't think they thought they were going to do anything. But
then Adam Lambert happened.
Adam Lambert happened. And I think that this was just a one-off, it's like a little medley, and 8 minutes it was. And as far as I was concerned, that was it. But that was enough for me to go, can't believe it, Until the following year, we did a handful of dates, 2012. In classic Queen fashion, as I've learnt since doing it for a few years now, the first gig we did was in front of what turned out to be about 300 to 350,000 people in Kiev, because it was the...
I heard about this.
Yeah, it was the European Euro, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was like a municipal, even though it was like a free gig. So consequently, everyone and his dog was there. But after the first 40,000 people, it didn't sort of make any sense. I was like, I can't make it. But then there was a photograph, I think I've got it on my fridge, someone took of an aerial shot, and it's just mind-blowing, I was thinking. But this was their first proper 2 hour gig or whatever it was then. And
so you had like months of rehearsal, or...?
Not that long, no. I think we did maybe a week.
Wow.
And there was minimal production then, compared to what they've got now, But it's got to the point now where, they know most of what's going on, so we don't do... I don't think they like to overdo things. I'm laughing because they have this affectionate term of something like escaping perfection or whatever, we don't want to get, laughing about it, and it's very funny. But they, I think they like to keep it fresh. They don't want to...
Well, they've been playing the songs for...
Yeah, exactly, you know what I mean?
And
Honestly, I'm still blown away by
amazing.
How they're still doing it and want to do it, because I always thought, up until 2 or 3 years ago, like I said, I thought maybe they'll do this and maybe this will be the last sort of thing they're doing, but they just keep going. And so now I just think, well, until they've had enough, or maybe health, or whatever. Roger's still playing for 2 hours doing stuff, and Brian, and they're running up and down and doing all this. It's amazing, but it is. I'm just, it's luck, I was at a place where Brian came in, and thanks to Kerry, who was sort of joking, saying, he's a bit good. We should steal him, shouldn't we? Like laughing, But I think that's what happens, and I'm sure a lot of musicians have said that they happen to be somewhere.
Yeah. But you, it's like hard work and luck combined.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to keep the gig, haven't you? You know what I mean?
That's it, yeah.
Watch this space. Where's Neil?
So, John Deacon has just been out of the picture since.
Yeah, I think John has, by all accounts, I think he's just eschewed the limelight. I don't think he really wanted to do it anymore. But I think 1997 was the last thing he did with them, right. In any. As Queen.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So he's a very private man.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
What was it like digging into those bass lines and really having to get them down? Like, did it ruin some of the magic, or was it like, wow, or did you know them already? Learning his parts, because they're so. It's like we were saying before about like the kind of Willie Weeks, James Jamerson thing. Like they really are a memorable part in itself, with so many songs.
Exactly.
It's like you can't really wing it. Like you have to play that up the octave little thing and stuff like that, because it's all part of the
absolutely.
line.
And there's little things that even if people out there listening, even if they're not musicians, if they don't hear, I know it was an overdubbed thing, but if they don't hear the fastidious and precise, the little
like in Best Friend or something like that.
Yeah, and in Best Friend, you know, if they don't hear these things, they'll go, oh, how come that's different? You know, and I know that John live, you know, he wasn't necessarily religiously sticking to what his parts were, but on record, the way I thought about it was that I've got to do as much as I can about the record. So I try and do about 80% of what John Deacon did, and the rest I sort of might do a little bit of what I do. And there are times as well where you get used to doing something, and then I'll go, oh, do you know what, I'm going to check that out again, and something might have morphed over the years, you know, and I think, oh no, he actually does that. But then Brian and Roger have always said, you know, don't get too attached to, you know, you don't have to do, you know, because we've always changed things up a little bit, you know, do what suits, you know, and sometimes we'll have discussions about stuff, you know, that section there, do you want to try this? Yeah.
And do you kind of reference live versions and stuff?
Yeah, occasionally, Did
he changed it up live as well?
He did. Oh yeah, there are definitely things that John would do that is not on the record, and then stuff that he would do that is on the record and stuff, and from gig to gig they do that. But I try to put the records as being the standard, because that's what most people know, you know.
Exactly,
and you know, that I think the thing as well is that what I loved about him was that he sort of had these little things that he did without stepping on any toes.
So it was just always in that right little, there's a bit of space.
Little space that was there. And I think because of his love of soul music as well and stuff, that he wasn't just an out-and-out rocker where he was, you know what I mean, that was... And I guess in those days as well, just because people were doing rock, you know, John Bonham was a big Motown fan, wasn't he? You know what I mean? He loved...
Well, I mean, that's the groove, right?
Exactly, you know what I mean? And it's only later generations that were directly influenced by what you'd call rock, heavy rock players, you know what I mean, and stuff. Then, I suppose, their influences would have gone back only 20 years, you know what I mean, from the beginning of rock and roll or whatever, you know, and less, you know, less than that, you know. So... and the jazz stuff as well, but the what I found about the whole thing with the John Deacon thing is that it's so eclectic there musically, you know what they're after, that you never get stifled or bored by, oh, I've got to do, you know what I mean, there's certain things that you play and you think, oh, that works, I'm going to do that because if I do that, it's not supporting that, you know what I mean. But then there's other things. I might change up stuff, like in the middle of I Want It All, the fast guitar bit. I think John plays kind of eighth notes on that, but I'd sort of cheekily do a little 16th thing just because it just really drives it. So I'm going ding digga ding digga 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 ding, you know.
Because of your Tower Power days.
The Tower Power thing, but I think it sort of drives it, and that's a decision I thought I'm doing rather than going ding 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 ding. And that's not because you know what I mean. It's just that little bit that I can afford to put a little bit in it. Just to me, it seems to work, and they're fine with it. No one said, you know, what you're doing there and stuff. And then there's little things like pressure. I always play with a pick because I played it with a pick, and there's a couple of other things.
Which is interesting because it's like if that bass line was presented to me, it wouldn't be my first choice to go, oh, this should be with a pick.
Yeah.
Like it. To me, it was like, oh, that should really be fingers.
Yeah, exactly. But I think any time I've seen him live playing it with a pick, when you listen to it, it sounds to me, I could be wrong, I was talking to Tyler about this, I'm not sure whether he's playing it on flats but with a pick. I might be wrong on that. I'm sure it's just maybe he's got something rolled off.
Maybe pan muted.
Could be, yeah, and I think that's what it is. And I think there are subtle differences, aren't there? It's like when you play, say, you know, Dancing in the Moonlight, Thin Lizzy, you know.
Oh, I went to Top Loader.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or Dana, didn't she have a hit with that originally in the 70s? Yes, that's that. But having that kind of you can play it with your fingers, but it doesn't have that. There's little subtle things that, you know, that a Thin Lizzy fan would go, oh, hang on, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean. I try and get it. So there were tracks like Stone Cold Crazy, he played with a pick, and I Want to Break Free, you know.
Tie Your Mother Down?
Tie Your Mother Down, no, I don't actually. What I did notice with John is that sometimes in the 80s, stuff that he used to play with the fingers, he started playing with the pick. Maybe he wanted that brighter.
Stuff got louder, maybe?
Yeah, probably, yeah. And maybe that sort of more, that sort of
through
the quality of 80s recordings where everything was a bit brighter.
Was he pretty much always P-bass?
He was. He did use... I think in 77, 76, 77 he got a Music Man Stingray. So
I remember seeing him using a wall.
Yeah, he's used a lot of different things. He's used, is it a Warwick musician? Buzzard? Is it not Warwick? There's another one called a buzzard.
Yeah, the Warwick buzzard.
On videos and stuff. I know that he has used the odd one. I like another one bites the dust is a Music Man with flats, I believe. Right. And that's a fantastic sound. He was obviously it's virtually chic, you know what I mean? But he was loving all that stuff. Bernard Edwards. Always, whenever you get like the name Bernard, you can't say it in Britain. You have to say it the way the Americans do. Because if you say Bernard Edwards, it sounds like he lives at number 10 Smith Street.
Oh yeah, Bernie.
Yeah. So it's like Graham, isn't it? Graham.
Yeah.
Graham, yeah.
Craig.
With
an E, C-R-E-G. That's
I see. Yeah,
Craig.
Yeah, Craig. That's fair enough. And so that's the thinking behind it, you know what I mean? So,
did he have do you remember the Ibanez musician basses? They were like
he might have done.
Because that was my first bass.
Oh, really?
And I'm pretty sure that there's a picture of him playing one, I think.
He might have done. There's a famous picture of him, I think, when they're in Denmark or somewhere in Scandinavia. It might even have been Japan. You know, they're fairly close. And he's playing, and it looks so wrong. He's got a Fender Jazz. And I think it's for promotion. I think perhaps they were, I'm just thinking, it doesn't look right, that, you know what I mean? It's
like this, with the thumb out.
yeah, exactly, It's like when you first see Geddy Lee, without the Ricky, you know what I mean? Even though he did play the Fender Jazz and stuff like that. But, I think that most of the time, I would say 80-90% of the recordings is on a Fender P, And the thing about precision basses, which I love, is just the simplicity of it, you know what I mean? It's volume, tone, thanks,
Very rarely is it not a suitable bass for it.
That's the thing, it's so versatile, isn't it? And you'd think, and I've found as well that, I've had basses where they've got the stack knobs and this does this, whatever, and in the end you go, I don't know what I'm doing anymore with this, I'm not
passive.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's what's good about it. Same with jazz basses, you know what I mean? At least Leo sort of got it right, didn't he, on his first, second time, whatever.
So how many basses are you using in the show?
I've got 4 basses. Got 3 P basses. I've got a 74 black one, which is actually quite heavy, as a lot of 70s ones. I did have a 76 P bass years ago, which I sold, and that was like a tank. And then I've got 2...
Is that maple board?
That's rosewood. That's a rosewood neck fretboard.
Yep.
I've got a maple one that's got flats on.
Right.
I try and do this thing where anything from 73 to sort of 76, I'll play flats on some stuff. I'm trying the inner nerd, like Killer Queen and stuff. I'll use the flats on that, and that's always. I love the sound of that. It's great. And then I've got another bass which is like from 2011 or something, a P bass, which is my main one.
Right.
Which has got this gold pick guard on it, which I think back in 2014, which was when we started touring in Anger, I think the stage setting was like a gold vibe, and on this bass, I sort of had to go out quickly and get it because I thought I've not got a spare and I need more than the P bass that I've got, this, that, the other, and I just got this bass. It was nice, and but I didn't like the pick guard. Anyway, Steve Pryor, who was working for us, who's worked with all the legends, Jeff Beck, Dave Gilmore, Brian May.
What does he do?
He's a guitar tech.
Guitar tech,
stuff like that. He said, "Oh well, I can get you a," you know what I mean. So they'd ordered. I think it was Steve, or maybe it was. I don't know who it was, but they'd ordered this pick guard, and I've just kept it on since. So it's and I quite like it because it sort of reminds me of the very first tour that we did, and it's kind of looks a bit weird, but that's what it is, And then I've got a Music Man. I think it's the 25th anniversary. Is it some chocolate sunburst, something or other, which I use for Another One Bites Dust, and if I can change in time, which I've not been doing, I used it on time or the down and stuff like that. But yeah, I think you're right. With John Deacon's bass parts, there's a lot of stuff. There's obvious things like Off Day at the Races, like Millionaire Waltz and stuff. Do you know that track?
No.
Or whatever. I think he must have got together with Freddie to do that. He does this lovely piece with him, and the intro of it, and it sounds great. And there's loads of stuff actually that he does. You just think, oh, it's lovely,
Yeah.
And actually, the interesting thing, which I found fascinating, Brian told me this, was that John didn't particularly want to be told what the chords were. He had great ears. They all had great ears, and he would just play it to me, And I think there's a lot of inversions, aren't there? You know what I mean?
There's a lot of like thirds and
exactly.
Yeah,
and
D
you
over
think
sharp
he's
five.
doing stuff, or he's pedaling over something, or he'll whatever. So I think that's nice. I think he rather than get bogged down with, and I think that's what gave him the colour. Plus, the interesting thing about Queen was that obviously Freddie would write in F and B flat, A flat, E flat, piano, as they would say, piano keys, and Brian would have a lot of the like A's and E's and D's and G's, the guitar stuff, even though he was great on all of that. Plus Roger with how he wrote, and then John would have his thing. So I think in the band, it was interesting for them because I guess for each song they would bring to them, oh, it's this kind of thing, so I'll do that, Good old fashioned lover boy, There's a lot of stuff that I think it's easy to overlook with Queen because people say, oh, the bombastic, front man, and showman, and so all this is true, but he was an absolute genius, he's some beautiful harmony, and clever stuff that he did, and still within that pop sort of thing. But you know what I mean? You only have to.
The opening minute of Killer Queen, it just goes through. It's just like, what? How did we start?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just think, and I think that's the thing.
But you're not watching and going, oh, this doesn't work. He goes, oh yeah, I'm on the journey.
Absolutely, yeah. And Joe Public isn't going, oh, this is too complicated. His sense of melody and where it was going and stuff like that. It's great. I think that was the thing about that probably in the first place that without knowing it is that they just had great ideas, and that's the thing when you look at the set list, and they're not playing things like A Kind of Magic, they're not playing One Vision, they're not playing You're My Best Friend or Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, they're not playing Save Me or Play the Game on this particular. You're thinking, hang on, there's another greatest hits worth of stuff that they're not playing.
Yeah.
That they,
I was of the era where one of the first albums I ever bought was Queen Greatest Hits.
Yeah.
But just after Freddie died.
Right.
When it kind of got re-released kind of thing. So that's one of my first ever albums, and I just wore it out. That and Status Quo, Rockin' All Over the World, double cassette.
Right, exactly, yeah. Well, and this is the thing is that it's the classics. The thing about the Queen first greatest hits album, it's a bit like the Eagles' greatest hits. It's one of the best greatest hits, best of whatever at the time, up until 1981, I think it came out. You're right. I did when I got into Queen. That's when I thought, I'll get the greatest hits because and on the original album it would tell you what the tracks were from, and so I was going, I've got to get that album, and I love this, And the other thing as well is, sorry, I'm being overly verbose now, but the one thing that really, talking about Freddie's death, is that when November 1991, when that Christmas they re-released Bohemian Rhapsody with These Are the Days of Our Lives, like double A side. And one thing that struck me was that they played. I went to the pub that night. It was Christmas Eve, and I wasn't gigging or whatever. And in fact, I think I've only ever gigged once on Christmas Eve. I love Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, like now, it's like with my family and stuff like that. But I remember going out with my pals and stuff, and it must have been on about 10, 15 times, probably more in the night, for the few hours that I was there. And people were on, the chairs and tables, and they're doing proper, singing this whole stuff. And I felt saying, it's amazing. It's just like when I was a kid, you know what I mean? This love for them and for Freddie and stuff. But what really got me was, and this is, this speaks volumes about like Brian. I remember in interviews Brian would say, I didn't just want to do like a vibey, improvised solo, and we'll take a bit of this and a bit of that, whatever. But neither did I want to just copy the melody. He was through composed some of it. So when you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, the audience is taken with you. The listener is taken. You know, it's not just a throwaway guitar break. And every single person, and they weren't musicians, you know, were singing, you know, the da 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 da, you know, but in pub chant, you know. And I thought, that's amazing. How many bands do people actually sing note for note the solo, you know?
Solo, yeah.
And I think that was the thing. Here we go. Oh, is that mine?
Oh, that's you. Yeah,
that's me reminding me it's 11 o'clock.
It is 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should probably wrap it up there, man, because you do have to.
Let's
get
not
on
get
the
our
roads
hands in
with
the
the
coffin.
boys.
I'm so sorry about that. I just walked off with it. Keep it in though. It's good comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
brilliant.
Thanks so much for getting me tickets to see the show, which was amazing. If you get a chance to see Queen and Adam Lambert, this guy absolutely nails it, and it's just
thank you.
It's such a fun show.
Yeah,
like it's really enjoyable. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you making time to have me over here and
you, cheers,
talk
Craig.
about this. So, if people want to kind of get in touch with you or see what you're up to, Instagram probably best way.
Yeah, Instagram at Neil M Fairclough. I know, pretty heavy. That you can find me on there. But that's kind of the only social media I do. I'm a little bit of a Luddite, but I enjoy it. It's good stuff. You know, you can get to see what we do on tour and things.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Oh, mate, great
Thanks,
to see
man.
you. Thanks, Craig.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Fairclough.
you. Bye.
See ya.
Can't handle it.